All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for your presence here. Your presence here helps us, and we've got some important things to talk about, very important things to talk about today. So let's do what we ought to do and lift this up in prayer before we begin, and then we'll have a prayer of allegiance, a pledge of allegiance. Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us together today. We thank you for the fact that you have placed us in leadership positions. We're thankful that we're blessed with a strong group of volunteer firefighters and a city fire department, and we are grateful for the cooperation between those two. Lord, we're also grateful for the taxpayers that support these efforts and for the services that are provided to those taxpayers. We're grateful for each person that is here today. We ask your blessing on this meeting, your guidance in this meeting. We pray for the wisdom to make these decisions. And whether we all agree or not, we pray, Lord, that ultimately you bring us together with the same vigor and commitment to staying the course, whatever that might look like in the days ahead. We just turn this meeting now over to you in Christ's name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, good morning. Today is a special meeting. This is really a workshop for the commissioners, but there is an action item today on the agenda. And this workshop is designed to enable these commissioners to get some clarity in their own minds as to how we should handle fire protection in the county. And this has been a long discussion, and it's not over yet. And we're currently very fortunate to have the services of the city of Mount Pleasant as a support to our volunteer firefighters, and it's a cooperation that has worked well for us. And we are at the tail end of a 10-year contract with the city that's had 2 extensions, so effectively a 12-year agreement in the form of a contract with the city to provide fire protection services for us. And so as we get very close to October 1st, it's time to make some important decisions. Are we going to renew a contract, some form of relationship with the city of Mount Pleasant for fire protection, or is there something else that we want to do? We certainly don't want to completely get out of the fire protection business for our residents. And so the question, one of many, is what level of fire protection do we want to continue to provide to our residents, and how much are we willing to spend out of our budget? How much are we willing to ask the taxpayers of this community to contribute toward that effort? And we've got many of our wonderful volunteers here with us, past, present, and maybe even future. And we also have a special guest that I would like to introduce. Chief Andy Inslee from Hopkins County is right up here at the front table. And at the request of one of our commissioners, or a couple of them, he has come today to tell us a little bit about fire protection in one of our neighboring counties in Hopkins County. And he's not necessarily here to try to sell us on any form of fire protection, but he's here to tell us about what works for them, and we're grateful for the time that he has taken out of his day to come and talk to us. While I have a statement that I would like to give, I think I'm going to hold off on that. I believe everyone pretty well knows where I stand on this subject. I've said it numerous times. I'll reiterate what I feel, but that doesn't mean that my mind is 100% made up. It's never completely made up until it's time to take that final vote. And I'll keep an open mind as we talk amongst us today. And I will promise you that I'll factor everything that I've heard into that final decision. But I do assure you that I've spent a lot of time thinking about this and praying about this decision, because I do believe it's important. So again, before I make any statement, I want to start off and give our commissioners any opportunity to make a statement, to say what they're thinking, what's on their mind, what their concerns are, what they're wrestling with. Maybe they want to say something, maybe they don't. And when they're finished, I guess I'll wait and see then, you know, who do I want to call upon next? And anybody in this room is welcome to make any comment that you would like. This is going to be a very open style today. We've got a microphone up here. We don't run a live feed that's provided by the county. We may be live right now. Sonia, are we live? Sonia says we're live on Facebook or YouTube or whatever. So again, keep that in mind. Also, I don't see anybody in this room that is a known offender of being disruptive in a meeting. Every face I see in this room is respectful of this commissioner's courtroom, so I don't anticipate any raised voices in here. But again, as a reminder, that's the way we do it in here. We keep this a cool, calm, and collected meeting, and we don't allow for anything else. Everyone has a voice in here. Anyone can say anything that they want, and all opinions are respected and listened to. We may or may not agree, but we're going to be respectful of one another, one way or another. Beginning with Precinct 1, Commissioner Parchman, any opening comments that you would like to begin with?
I think I'm going to hold off and wait till the end.
Okay. Commissioner Fitch.
I'm just still getting my mind wrapped around it. I'd like to hear everybody's thoughts on it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Applewhite.
Not exactly. I'd like to hear what everybody has to say.
Okay. Commissioner Parker.
I think I do too.
All right. Is there anyone in this room that wants to kick it off? Again, I'm happy to get it started, but I'm going to be respectful and let anyone else begin. If there is just something that you've just got to jump out there and get out on the record. All right. I'm going to make an opening statement then, and again, like I said, I don't think there's going to be any real surprises here. Some of this you've heard before, but I'd like to reiterate it again for the record. For the past 10 months or so, I guess on about every 2 months, I've asked Chief McRae, who is the fire chief of the Mount Pleasant Fire Department, to join us here in Commissioner's Court. He gives us a very extensive report every 2 months, and I asked him to do that about a year ago so that those that listen to our YouTube feeds of our meetings, and so that our commissioners and anyone that's in our live audience here will be able to hear what the current status is of fire protection within the county and within the city, but primarily what's going on within the volunteer fire department, so that we, once this day arrived, October 1 of 2022, would have a very clear understanding of what fire protection we could provide for ourselves without the city of Mount Pleasant. Chief McRae and I also have been meeting for many, many years. He makes it a point to come to my office on a regular basis, and about a year ago I finally said, you know what, you're bringing me so much information here, I can't keep up with it, and I certainly can't disseminate it to the rest of the commissioners. Would you consider coming up here and giving this report so that everyone can hear about this and not just me? So I'm grateful for the time he puts in for all the reports that he provides and that he prepares. The 10-year contract ended back on September 30th, 2020. We've received 2 one-year extensions, and it began as a fixed amount with a CPI annual adjustment. And while there have been these CPI adjustments to the contract, those adjustments really have not kept up with the true expenses of the Mount Pleasant Fire Department, nor the real reduction in volunteer department manpower that has resulted from the retirement of much of our volunteer manpower and the lack of matching replacements to step in after them. The proposed new contract, and I say proposed because it's not in final form, nobody has signed any contract, we've been working on that. The proposed new contract is a 5-year contract with automatic 5-year renewals unless a 12-month written notice is given. There are default provisions in this 5-year contract that allow a 60-day cancellation. Now, a default provision doesn't just mean, well, we don't really like this anymore, so we're going to bail out. No, a default would be if the county quit paying or if the city of Mount Pleasant quit sending firefighters to county events. So those are serious default provisions that would allow a 60-day cancellation. Again, this is not a contract where either party can just say, you know, we no longer want to do this, it's too expensive, or we don't want to pay that much, or whatever. These are my opinions and my opinions only. Let me be clear about that. Still, the best form of city-county fire protection is joint cooperation. This minimizes duplication of manpower, equipment, and expenses and capital expenditures. The current model relies on the premise that the frequency of overlapping events is low, and therefore an independent city and county fire department would be inefficient for Titus County. A separate city and fire department would result in significantly more total fire protection expense, especially to those that pay both city and county taxes. This goes against our individual responsibility to the taxpayers of this county to minimize taxes. The county has seen a significant reduction in volunteer participation. This isn't unique to us. It's nationwide, in fact, maybe even worldwide. Volunteer departments are unable to provide consistent and adequate protection without some city backup. I believe the volunteer chiefs realize this and for the most part agree, but they're here today and they can tell you straight from their mouth if I'm wrong, or they can tell you that, you know, they agree. The city, I think, has offered a reasonable solution. In this proposed contract, the county would pay a percentage of the city's total fire protection expenses, including capital outlays. 40% is their suggested participation by the county. This would be implemented with 5 annual hikes. Initially, 32% for the 2022-23 budget year. Then it raises 2% each year up to 34, 36, 38, and ultimately 40%. The county payment is based on the city's proposed budget, not their actual budget, but there is a stipulation that a rebate is given to the county at the end of the year based on audited numbers after we see what the actual numbers are in comparison to the original proposed budget at the beginning of the year. The county has serious concerns that such unlimited participation puts the county at an unreasonable disadvantage. You've heard the term open checkbook. Well, that's one of the things that we're talking about, is that we don't have any control over that city budget, and they can pass on to us 40% of anything that they choose to add to their budget. The city plans on adding 3 full-time firefighters initially, with a ramp up to a total of 12 additions over the next 2 to 4 years. Such additions are necessary, according to Chief McCrae, to enable the city to commit resources to both the city and the county, considering the real growth within the county, and to meet the demands of overlapping events, which are becoming more frequent. And when I talk about an overlapping event, we're talking about a situation where the city would need to be in 2 places at one time, if possible, because we've got 2 independent things going on. And the more of those that you have simultaneously, the less we are able to provide adequate fire protection, either through our volunteer departments and certainly by the city, because they've only got so many firefighters on at any given time. Additional firefighters would give ability for the city to consider another engine company that would be needed if and when a 3rd station decision is made. In the meantime, that additional staffing will be stationed at the Highway 49 South location. Based on my discussions with the city, there are no current plans to approve a third station, nor has any location been determined. Location would likely be determined by a third party, and it may be located within the city limits or out in the county. We don't know right now. Last night's city council meeting, I don't know if any of you were there or not, I don't know if you watched it, but there was a council meeting last night to discuss fire protection. That meeting resulted in a 3-2 vote to offer the county the financial terms for the current version of the new contract. That's that 40% with the ramp up over 5 years. Or a 1-year extension to our current contract under the current contractual terms, which is about just under $1 million a year. I think it's like $960,000. So again, 3-2 vote to offer the county your choice. Take the financial terms of the current proposed contract in its current form, or we'll extend you for 1 year. The idea there is to give us a year to formulate an alternative to reliance upon the city to supplement our fire protection. This would give also the city time to ramp down their fire department. If they're not going to be responsible for the county at the end of that 1-year period, they need to get their manpower and expenses in line with their budget. That only makes sense. Should the 1-year extension option be requested by the county, it is the council's intention that provision of fire protection services to the county would no longer be available at the end of that 12-month extension. That clear? I think it is. In summary, my strong recommendation is that the county not consider the forming of either a county fire department or an emergency services district, which would be a separate taxing entity that would put a tax burden on county-only residents. And it would be used to fund and operate a county fire department. We must not, also, we must not allow the current level of fire protection that we enjoy to deteriorate. We can't just start providing less fire protection because we don't want to afford it, we don't want to pay for it, or we deem that we can't afford it. We owe it to our community to provide the best fire protection that we can. Specifically, I would ask the commissioners to approve the current version of the fire protection contract with the city of Mount Pleasant, at least the financial terms, specifically where we pay for 40% of the city's fire protection budget to be ramped up over that 5-year period, with 32% effective October 1, 2022 coming up here in a couple of weeks, followed by a 34, 36, 38, and 40 on the subsequent anniversary dates of October 1, 2023, 4, 5, and 6. I would further stipulate that this contract would include a clause that requires a statement from an independent auditor that there is no net expense to the city's budget for which the county is responsible that's due to sending firefighters and equipment to any jurisdiction outside of Titus County. To explain what I'm talking about there, the city from time to time will send some of their firefighters to other parts of the state, even outside of the state, to help and support other firefighters that are having to fight wildfires, say, in South Texas or as far away as California. And the county did not want to be responsible for paying a percentage of those expenses. And we have been assured that there is no net expense impact to their budget. They receive federal dollars that compensates them anytime that they do that. But we would want that clearly stated in there and verified by an independent auditor that there are no net expenses that we're responsible for as a result of that. I would further stipulate that the fire protection contract be reviewed by our Titus County attorney and any other attorney that may be recommended by the county attorney, and that any suggested changes would be voted on by the Fire Protection Committee for inclusion in the final draft of the contract. I don't know what those changes might be that John Mark Coburn might suggest, or another high-powered specializing attorney that would look this over and make suggested changes. But I think the main concerns that we have had have revolved around these financial terms rather than, how do we state, who's liable in a given situation. But nonetheless, I would like to reserve that right. So that's my thoughts, that's my feelings. And I guess, as they say, let's maybe hear from somebody else that might suggest a different alternative. Chief, would this be a good time for you to address us and tell us about what works for you in Hopkins County? And it's probably going to be very different from what I've suggested here, but that's what helps me make my decision.
Yes, sir. Be glad to.
And I'll be glad to pass you a mic, and you can sit right there, or you can come up to the podium, okay?
And the current new budget's coming out in 23-24. That's my current budget right there.
Do you need to refer to any of this while you're talking, and you can give it back to me? These are duplicate copies?
Yes, it is. One for each one.
Okay. Thank you.
I do appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm very honored to come and speak to you about this. Commissioner Parchman called me a couple of weeks ago. We kind of talked for a little while on the phone over how our department works, our county department works, and we also I also spoke to Chief McRae. He was kind of curious. We've always had a very professional working relationship between Chief McRae and I, just getting numbers as well, just doing his research and his due diligence as well on how our budget works, how our volunteer departments work. So just put that out front there that I have spoke to him too. And I'm not here to influence anybody of how we do it and the way Titus County should follow us, because that is not the case. Each county is their own individualism. That's what makes America great, of doing our own way. There is currently, we roughly think, around 7 paid county fire departments in the entire state of Texas out of 254 counties. That's saying a lot right there, because Hopkins County chose not to do an emergency service district back a long time ago. It has not, because the subject's not come up again in just the past few months. Some of the volunteer fire departments feel like they're not getting their fair share. So does it end all arguments with the volunteer fire departments? Because whether the city of Sulphur Springs ran it or Hopkins County runs it, no, it doesn't. I mean, there's not a fair shake when it comes down to the volunteer side of it. Yes, I've been a volunteer. I started in 1989. I'm telling my age a little bit here. That's what that platinum blonde's kind of coming on me now. So, but as I go forward thinking, and as the Commissioner Parchman and I talked, we got very similar stories here. We're at this time, the roles are just reversed. The city provides the protection out in the county, where now we provide the protection out in the county and into the city of Sulphur Springs. This all resulted back in '98 when the city of Sulphur Springs for many years went out into the rural unincorporated areas of Hopkins County, and the county provided a brush truck and the city provided 2 firefighters to go on all fire calls out in unincorporated areas of Hopkins County. They did that for the mere fee of $30,000. And that's, even back in '98, that was quite a bit of money. But as they got ready to move forward, the city said, we're thinking of new numbers. We're going to have to go up. And when they did, they met with the city and county, sit down and met, and they said, we're going to propose $300,000. Well, at that point, the commissioners all pushed back away from the table, said for that amount, we'll do it on our own. And that's where we came in the next year, January. We don't know what exactly date it was, but we took our truck back and we started putting part-time firefighters on the apparatuses. And it was just one, and it was not a very good truck at the time. They stayed in the basement of the courthouse. That's where their fire station was until they got a call. And then once they got the call, they went out. They progressed on to one of the volunteer stations at Brinker Station, and they ran out of that station for a while. And again, we're only dealing with part-time firefighters that was manning the truck from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and they were shut down on the weekends because the volunteers took over. Because at that time the dairy industry was kind of slowing down in the late 90s, so where we depended heavily on the dairy farmers that could leave their dairy hens there at the farm, and the dairymen could go out and fight the fires. Well, that was going away. Those guys had to go, they were selling off the dairies and going to other type of jobs and things like that. So that availability of the dairymen were gone. So, and one time we were one of the largest dairy capital of the United States, because we had over 600 dairies in Hopkins County. So that's a lot of people that was helping with their communities and things like that. So so they said on the weekends you're there, volunteers can take over, and then it eventually went to 7 days a week because that was not happening either with the volunteers. And then they moved to a little bitty building we call the old Alamo in downtown Sulphur Springs, because it looked like an old Alamo. The fire truck would barely fit in there. The commissioners had actually bought a new engine that could actually fight grass fires, house fires, do a little bit of all of it, all-inclusive type truck, and we were still part-time. I came in 2006. I moved to Hopkins County. My wife had already was a resident of that area before we married, and I came in. Most of my career is from Atlanta, Texas Fire Department. We were fire-based EMS, so we did all of it. We were really an EMS service for firefighting capabilities, basically what it was, because we did a lot of EMS runs. So when I came here, we were still at the old Alamo in downtown Sulphur Springs near the Northeast Texas Farmers Co-op, and we were still 12 hours, but we were 7 days a week, and we had one full-time firefighter and a part-time firefighter, and at 2 in the afternoon, a third firefighter would come in that was part-time as well to finish out the 7 p.m. shift. They were building the new station where we're at now in 06, and once we moved into the new station, we went to 16 hours. We stayed like that for almost quite a year until a very influential person of our county had a fire at their farm, and she graciously the next day, I was actually on duty, brought in a large sandwich tray. We took her tour across the station because we were very proud of that beautiful station that we got. And when she said, "Well, y'all sleep here at night?" "No, ma'am, we don't. We're only 16 hours. The very next day, I do not know who she talked to or who she influenced. We came 24 hours that very next day. So there's politics in this, I'm telling you, a lot of politics in it. So the county did take over that budget at $300,000. When I came in 2016 as the fire chief for the county, the budget was a little over $500,000. This year is the first year we ever reached over $1 million. And the reason why is because 3 years ago we got a SAFER grant that allowed us to go to a 3-man engine, and with that 3-man engine company, that 3 years ran out. The county's picking up the whole tab this coming budget right here, so that's what put us over that. We have very small operation lines. It's a very tight budget to run off of, but we cover 793 square miles out of that one station. It's in the city limits of Sulphur Springs, and the reason why is because it's the most central location that they could, and it's a great location because we can hit any major thoroughfare and realistically get anywhere in the county in about 15 minutes. The most furthest point we have struggles getting up to is the Sulphur Bluff area up in there because it's so far up, and there's not a lot of good FM roads on the northern side of Hopkins County. It's great on the south side. We can hit any major area and get there really quick, but not so much. We also have the same common theme as I-30 runs right through the middle of us as well as it does here in Titus. Both counties have a lot of major incidents out on there. So A lot of times, it may be the 4, and I say 4 because we still continue that part-time firefighter in our budget, that we have off-duty firefighters from other areas that come work for us. And we have the 4-man crew. Sometimes we get some of the volunteers, sometimes we don't. Judge Lee is correct. It is a worldwide epidemic going on with people wanting to volunteer anymore. Our generation, I see sitting in here in this room, of the older generation and mid-age, we're still okay with it. But the newer generation, they want to get paid for everything they do, and that's okay. That's their generation. That's the way we're going to have to get used to that. But those are things we, as leaders, are going to have to learn how to deal with. We're either going to pay them, or we're just not going to have that service anymore. It's just going away, and that's unfortunate, because that's what has built America, is volunteerism. And again, I was one from 1989, and I started out in an emergency service district when they was actually called fire districts then. It was very young, and the only way that fire district flourished in Cass County was because we had an international paper, and that's the only way. If we depended on rooftops to pay the taxes, it would not do very well. Delta County does okay with their ESD because they have about a little over 5,000 residents of Delta County. They have just went paid themselves this year, and that's because the city of Cooper and the ESD started, but they're part-time. They start out just like we did, part-time, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. So those are a lot of things to factor in here. It's hard to ramp a department up immediately. It takes a lot of work, and as Commissioner I talked about the relationship between the city and Sulphur Springs. 16 years is what it took us to get our relationship back together. Now our relationship flourishes. One of the first things I did coming in, and I'm an outsider from Hopkins County, so it sometimes takes an outsider sometimes to kind of look at both sides of things. And that's the first thing I did. I met with Chief Eric Hill at the time, was Chief of Sulphur Springs. We have got to sit down and we got to clear the table, and we got to get these relationships right. And we signed an automatic aid agreement that not only the Commissioner's Court had to sign, but also the City Council of Sulphur Springs had to sign. I had to go in front of both court and City Council, explain our statute, because the City of Sulphur Springs pays 67% of Hopkins County taxes because they have the most population inside the city limits. Why are they not due the county services? And that was not happening. The city was on their own, the county was on their own. But we threw all that away, and we got, hey, the citizens of Sulphur Springs pay county taxes. They deserve the county fire department as well. And the city now reciprocates that. There used to be a 2-mile radius around the city. Now it's Chief David James is the fire chief of Sulphur Springs. He will go anywhere in that county I ask him to go. And he'll send an engine out. He keeps the city covered. Where it's call back, off-duty personnel, he has the crew that's coming on the next day. He will call those firefighters back to cover their city while they're out in the county with us, but they leave one engine in the city at all times so they don't deplete their city of services. That works well. We don't call them out quite as much because we do have the volunteers. We have 11 fire stations, or 11 departments within our county. Some are small, some are bigger, some provide great services, some just have brush trucks, and that's fine because it all works out well. We're again seeing the decline of the response, so that's why they added that third person full-time where it used to be a part-time. So there used to be 2 full-times and a part-time until we got the Saber grant 3 years ago. So now we're 3 full-time, 4 full-times with a part-time in there, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So we're not even still covering that weekend with that 4th person. So we're down to 3 again because we rely back on the volunteers again to help us cover that manpower side of it. So the fire station, a little bit about that, how it got built, that grant is no longer even available. Our commissioners, 4 of the 3, along with Judge Cletus Millsap, went to Washington, D.C., stayed there an entire week lobbying for a transportation grant because we piggybacked off what used to be what was called the Northeast Texas Rural NITO, was the rural vans. You see the bus routes, now it's taken over by the council of government. They had no home, so they built a home for them. We piggybacked off of them building the fire station, and we put an EMS dorm, which EMS rents from us, and that goes back into that budget for repairs and maintenance of the building. So we piggybacked off that transportation grant back in 2005 is when they got that grant, and it was being built in 06. So really moved into it about the edge of 07. So it's a beautiful building, still very functional. What are our future plans as far as it goes with the decline of the volunteerism? We got a 5-year plan, but we've looked at a lot of options. We're still looking at, we're going to go to around Glen Rose. That's another county paid fire department. They have actually chosen to go combination where you have the paid guys and you sometimes might have to shoot your personnel out to the outlying volunteer stations, and that's how that works. So there's a lot of still things that goes on, even as established as we are, because we're 23 years old now. That's a baby department, really, 23 years old. So we still are continually learning, continually trying to build relationships, not only with Sulphur Springs, our volunteer fire department, but also with our neighboring counties. And we do a lot, we depend on a lot of grants. One thing I will tell you, in this position, when I came in, I interviewed in front of the Commissioner's Court in a work session. I went against 12 very qualified people, and I feel very honored to still be in this position. But after they called me back in for a second interview, they said, well, congratulations, you got the job. And by the way, you're also the emergency management coordinator for the county. Congratulations. So, but since then, I have taken on other duties. So that's something the court needs to know is you get a lot of bang for your buck. This is the first year I've hit $70,000. If you compare my salary to any other chiefs around this area right here, that is very low. And your county firefighters are not going to make, we don't make what the city makes because they have water and sewer rates that they can tack on to what their taxes are. So that's how they get a higher pay scale than what we do. Do I keep retention on guys? My older guys that are captains and things like that, I keep retention on those. But my drivers and my firefighters, we're a good training ground for them. But they get a lot of experience in a short period of time. And can I blame them for going, we're too close to the Metroplex. We can't compete against it. Y'all are too close to Texarkana to compete against them. So those are things you got to factor in. Your pay won't be what the city's is because they have that water and wastewater part of there, that's how they get their extra salaries and stuff like that. But with mine, not only am I now the county fire chief's deal, but I'm also the county fire marshal. I also do, we have Homeland Security that falls under the fire department, which that encompasses the fire marshal's office, the emergency management, environmental, which is the aerobic system, that falls under us too, and the local health authority. That came on because of COVID. So we put that all, we coupled out under the Homeland Security, a little more easy for me to manage, but I'm also the flood control manager for the county. I do that as well. And we also got subdivisions that we have to deal with. They come to our department first to get things rolling, and I set all the meetings up for the commissioner, whatever precinct the subdivision's going in. I set that meeting up. I make sure that everything's getting going forward before they do a preliminary, and then the final plat. I work right hand in hand with the county clerk on that. So, yeah, they get a lot for the money that they pay. And I'm not complaining because I knew what I was getting into, and I did that. Some of this stuff is I told the judge I can do that for you. One thing they did bless me with was an operations chief. You see that line last year, or this year's budget is just closing out in a couple of weeks. That line got moved from Homeland Security over to the fire department side. I had a full-time deputy fire marshal. I am not law enforcement. Even to being in the fire service over 30 years, I thought that a fire marshal had to be triple certified. We're fire, EMS, and law. That is not the truth. The Commissioner's Court can appoint someone that has zero fire experience or certifications, no law enforcement. As long as they're appointed and bonded by the Commissioner's Court, they can be the county fire marshal. The reason they did that a couple of years ago is we had a couple of volunteer departments that were going a little rogue on us, and there was some administrative law that put us over the VFDs, and we kind of did that to get things kind of lined back out. Everything's great now. We don't have any more problems with those departments. We had to do a little, this is the way the county wants it to do. Not that we're looking to take away the individualism of the volunteer fire departments. We just had to put that in place. So that's another hat that I wear, along with being the county fire chief, is the county fire marshal, because I have a designee for the law enforcement. I have my deputy fire marshal, Rodney Cottle, that works for me part-time because he's a full-time fire captain in Rockwall Fire Department. So he can do all the ticket issuing, fire investigation, all that kind of stuff, because I have a designee on that side of it. So I know I gave you a lot of information in a short period of time. Nothing was written down. This is just, I know it. I've been around it for a long time. Not saying I know everything by any means, and we're always looking, like Judge Lee said, I'm always an open book. I'm always open for better ways to run things more efficiently. We had to run a very efficient budget. This year, we went way over because we had a lot of repairs and maintenance with all the grass fires that we had, with all of our equipment tearing up. The fuel was astronomical. We had a lot of issues with our building this year, especially when someone runs through it with open door and takes out one of your brick columns. That's very expensive. And we've all been there. I've taken out a door myself in my career. But, just things like that are unanticipated. With the emergency services, whether it be law enforcement or fire or EMS, the budget is a guideline, because I promise you always have things, and that's something as a court you need to be aware of. You're always going to have things. That budget, I tried my best for 6.5 years, because I've been here since 16, and I have not made budget yet. I've gotten close, but I've never made budget because we've always had the unexpected. Now, we hadn't had a lot of budget to work with. I really need about $300,000 more to be broke, to be honest with you. So, but if any questions y'all got, if I can help you, y'all ask me. I'm like the budgets, y'all are welcome to look at that. That's all open record right there on that side of it. One thing I can say that we do meet bi-monthly with all of our volunteer fire chiefs, and we take input from them. What can we do to be better? It's always communications. We work very hard at that. I'm also over the communication towers. The sheriff's department runs the 911 center. I got the communication towers. How that works, I really don't know, but I did get it, and we put a lot of money into them to upkeep them. As y'all know, as Commissioner's Court, the communication towers are pretty costly items, and if you don't already have that, that's a very expensive piece of item right there we have to take care of. So I really manage 3 different budgets. I manage the communication tower budget, the Homeland Security budget, and then the fire side. So there's three things. And again, when you're a county employee, you wear lots of hats, and you learn how to do a lot of things, and you better get very good at delegating with those things. Otherwise, you can throw your pile of papers on your desk, whatever hits the ground first, you can start working on.
Right. Tell me again the hours that you're responsible for. Did you say you're still at 24 hours?
Yes, sir. We're 24 hours. We're actually, the duty crew works, we're 24/7, 365 days a year. And a year ago, I let the crews decide on it. It did not cost the county any more money because you still working 10 shifts a month, but we went to $48.96. So they're on 2 days and off 4. And that seems to really boost the morale of the paid personnel.
And that salaries budget of $418,000 again, how many different individual positions, including, well, yours is listed separately there.
Mine and operation chiefs are listed separate. And
okay.
So that's 9 full-time firefighters. And if you'll notice on down in there, the part-time line is, I think, 44-something thousand a year. I have to manage that as well, because if I start going over, because sometimes I carry that part-time over 24 hours. If I've got a part-time guy out or full-time guy out, I will use part-time employees to fill in vacation slots, sickness, things like that. I'll pull from the part-time first before I start over and overtime, because I do not have a very large overtime line at all.
Do those 9 full-time positions, does that include you and operations chief?
No, sir. That's
No.
that's the top 2 on there are mine.
So
and operations.
11 full-time, including chief, operations,
Yes.
and firefighters, and then how many total part-timers can you draw from?
I have a pool of 16
Okay.
that I can pull from. And they work anywhere from Tyler Fire Department all the way to the Metroplex Fire Departments over there. So I get to pull in that resource where those experiences come in too on different things. One thing about Hopkins versus the Metroplex, we fight a lot of fire just like y'all do here in Titus County. A lot of fires, a lot of wrecks. Where in the Metroplex, they don't have a lot of fires. So they come here to gain a little experience on our side. So when they leave Hopkins County, they leave with a lot of experience, and that's kind of sought out in the Metroplex, which is a big honor for us. You know, we can't pay them a high salary like they get in the Metroplex, but when they're gaining so much experience, they probably my 3 to 5 year person is probably seen as many fires as a 10 to 15 year guy in the Metroplex. Because I mean, we just fight a lot of fire. When you cover 793 square miles, you're going to see a lot.
Yeah. And the county does not pay anything to the city of Sulphur Springs for
No, sir.
services?
They do not pay anything, not anymore.
And you have worked it out where you provide labor for them and they do the same for you?
Yes, sir.
And so they're on call and they'll come to any event that you might have if they're needed? I mean, when do they know whether or not to show up? Do you make that call?
No, actually the captain on duty will make that call. If he gets there and sees that the scene is not as bad, they can handle what they have coming, we'll immediately turn the city back around. That way they can get back to their city. And they do the same for us a lot of times. Now we go to every structure fire in the city of Sulphur Springs. We go to all fire alarms because that's part of our ISO rating between the both of us. And then we go to most of all their major wrecks, not their minors, little small fender benders. We don't get dispatched out with them on that, because beforehand, the only way that we went on any call with the city is once they got on scene and their captain or whoever's in charge of the scene would see they need us. Well, now that's no longer. We're an automatic. We're in the original alert with them, the tone, to respond with them. That way we're not behind the 8 ball when we get there. And typically they do not use our engine unless we're first in, and we'll use it. But most time, if we're second in or third, our truck will be off to the side, not being utilized. So if we do happen to catch a call out in the county, we can, even if we're inside the structure fighting an interior structure fire, we'll pull out as quick as we can, get somebody to replace us, and then we'll go out in the county to help the volunteers. Because we know that they have no one else coming to help them. So that's where we move forward like that.
Okay. So in effect, the county compensates the city by providing some services by their own department.
Absolutely.
That's
yes,
a nice relationship.
Yes, and again, it wasn't like that for about the first 16 years of our existence. It was very rough and rocky between not only the Commissioner's Court, but the City Council of Sulphur Springs. And I'm just very honored to be a part of that, where we could get, and it wasn't just me, it was a group of a lot of great people, great leaders that finally said, yeah, it's time to move forward. And we have, and it takes that. It can't be just one person. It's got to be everybody wanting to work together. Y'all have that in the same sense with the city and the county right now. I think I know everything's not perfect, and but again, y'all basically have flip-flop roles where the city is going out in the county, where we're out in the county and coming into the city, and that 67% of the tax base, when the city of Sulphur Springs is paying that's a big factor. And that's where the one thing I was very adamant about, the citizens of Sulphur Springs pay county taxes. They deserve the services that we provide. And that was a hard sell, not only to the Commissioner's Court, but to the volunteer fire departments. And they finally kind of sit back and looked, yeah, you're right. That is correct, because I said, what if you lived in the city? You know, would you, and you pay county taxes, you don't really get anything in return. Now, the city does not own a jail. It does not own any court system. They actually utilize our justice of the peace to do their city municipal courts. The 2 JPs do, because we only have 2 now. And they utilize our constables. So the city gets a lot of services, but that's one service they were not getting for the bang for their buck on that. And you spoke of that in your opening statements, of where, you know, however you slice it, it's the city and the county have got to work together. It's imperative now, more than ever in our country's history, we have got to work together as a local government, whether it be a city itself and the county. If those city and counties are not getting along, that's where they might need to step back and take a look. And again, we're not perfect. The relationship's not always perfect, but they always come to a conclusion. Like you said, Judge Lee, it's always very diplomatic and no yelling, shouting. It's very easy to work with them. The city manager, Mark Maxwell, comes up to our work sessions a lot of times. Hey, this is what we got going on. How can we work this out? No arguments. They might be a little different of opinion, but it's always they work it out. And you know, this is a great court we got going right now. And the previous one when I started with was a great court. But we've all got to think progressively. We're all both counties in the same shape. We're both growing by leaps and bounds. We got to keep up with it. The court has a lot to do, and I only say that because being the emergency management coordinator for the county, I have to sit in on those meetings, because as emergency management coordinator, you got to know all the intertwines of how everything works with the county government, who's doing what, how they doing it, because if you get on scene, you got to know where all those things fit into place of the big puzzle. And Chief McRae being your county emergency management coordinator, and Judge Lee, them speaking, that's the key to it. And you know, y'all got that relationship. Again, I have the utmost respect for Chief McRae. He's probably one of the most respected fire chiefs in the state of Texas. And I don't know if y'all know that or not. I mean, I go all over the state of Texas. I guarantee you everyone knows who Chief Larry McRae is. And he's very, very respected. He's very respected throughout the Titmus side, wildland fire. Everybody knows him there. I don't know how the man's still doing it. 45 years. I interviewed with Chief McRae when I got out of Fire Academy in 1993. My first interview for fire department was with Chief McRae, and I answered. I won't even go into the question I answered. And after years into it, I still look back at it and said, that was one of the dumbest things you could have ever said to that man right there. And no wonder he didn't hire you that day.
Thank you. You helped me a lot. Commissioners, questions?
I think you answered all the questions I would ask.
Are your firemen on the county, are they EMTs also?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we're required. It's one of my requirements
Nowadays?
Yes, dual certifieds, and I have some that are triple certified, even just on the fire line, where they have their law enforcement because they have the admiration of becoming a deputy fire marshal or whatever it might be. So, and then I got a lot of them that go to paramedic school on their own. A lot of times I know it's a pretty given sign that they're fixing to get ready to go somewhere in the Metroplex, because most of those require paramedic, because a lot of those departments in the Metroplex are fire-based EMS, where they run the EMS. You know, our EMS side is ran by the hospital district through Hopkins County EMS, and they've branched out to 3 other counties, Rains, Franklin, and Delta is where they, so, and 4. So you got Hopkins there originally too. So y'all have a hospital district here too, don't you? So that's kind of a different animal as well on the hospital district side. Not even getting into that side of it, but yeah, that's where, you know, we help EMS. We'll go anywhere with them. We do have actually a EMS district that we respond with EMS, but a lot of times as the volunteer department does not respond, and it's a traumatic injury, we don't go on just small, you know, non-life threatening, but we go on quite a few runs with EMS on that side of it. We do not get compensated for that, nor does the city of Sulphur Springs get compensated for that. But the volunteers do get compensated for the EMS side. So that's a little bit of income for them. A little bit about the volunteers. They do take good care of the volunteers. And if you've never left out of that county, you really can't step back and see how good the Commissioner's Court is taking care of the volunteers. Where I had that advantage, kind of looking outside in, is they give them a monthly stipend. It's anywhere from $500 to almost $1,000 per department. It's according to what type of equipment they have, how many runs they have to get that increase between $500 and almost $1,000. That's something they worked on. They never have been able to really just nail down. It's across the board the same amount, and that's the court's decision on that. That's not mine. I don't get involved in that side of it. I try to encourage them. But they also, in the past 2 years, which has been a huge asset to them, where they didn't have to use their monthly stipend to pay their fuel bill, the county pays for all their fuel. They turn in an affidavit with all their fuel receipts, and they reimburse them for all their fuel. So the volunteers pay for it up front or have a charge account. That way they can write a check from the county to pay that fuel bill off. They pay for all their workman's comp insurance. They pay for they reimburse them for their vehicle insurance since they do not own the vehicles. They can reimburse them for the vehicle insurance. And then this past year, a couple of the commissioners got together, and now they take all the scrap metal that people bring to their precinct yard during spring cleanup or whatever it might be. They take that scrap iron, and you wouldn't think that it'd equate to that much. I really was shocked. The first year, all 4 commissioners pulled in their money, and they had $30,000 to start a tire replacement program for the volunteers, because a lot of times those tires get overlooked, and I understand that coming from the volunteer side when they're so expensive. So they give them $2,000 per department. They started with all their steer tires first, trying to replace those. Anything over 5 years old shouldn't be on a fire apparatus anymore. And then this next year they're going to do it. They're going to continue to do that, and the fund just keeps getting larger and larger. So hopefully they can get all the tires replaced. When you're talking about 67 pieces of apparatus throughout the county, you put replacing the tires on it, it gets very expensive, and that's even at government rate. So those are the things that they do to take care of the VFDs. What do I do as far as a lot of my full-time firefighters were volunteers, put themselves through fire academy, EMT school, and I try my best to hire within those volunteers. So that's an incentive. They can come right out with us anytime they want to as an extra person. Those are things that we try to do for the volunteer side, and we're always constantly trying to get more and more benefits for them. And that's 11 departments that we're having to help out right there as well. So it's about $165,000, unless it increased it in this last budget. I didn't know it. And we also pay for all their pump tests, their annual pump tests for their apparatuses to get their pumps tested. We also have a $10,000 line in the budget every year. If they have a major breakdown and they do not have the money in savings to fix that apparatus, they can go before the fire chiefs. They can approve whether they get that $10,000. They can get all the way up to $10,000, and then they got 3-year payment where they can use their monthly stipend to pay back that loan on that side of it. So 0 interest, anything like that, it just comes out of their monthly stipend until that's paid back. And they don't take the entire stipend, they just take out whatever it takes to pay that amount that they borrowed back.
In your fire station, your county fire station, your main station, what piece of apparatus do you have in there?
We have one brush truck. It's a 2004. It's very aged. It's time to replace it, but we're not quite there yet. And we have a 2017 Ferrara fire engine that we got in 2017 right after I came in. It's custom cab, like you see here in the city of Mount Pleasant. And then we have a very old reserve engine, a 1993 quality engine that's actually out of service at the moment because we blew the transfer case out, and we're like everybody else. I reached out to it was a Sulphur Springs, one of their original engines, enclosed cab engine in the county, first enclosed cab engine in the county, because used to they had the old doghouse style, and they got this one. They kept it. They sold it to us for $5,000 back 4 years ago. It's been a good truck. We just had this problem with it about 2 months ago, so I reached out to Shreveport Fire Department because I knew they ran that same kind of engine, and actually we're trying to get that piece donated to us to get that truck back and going, because we just don't have the money to replace it with a brand new apparatus and put our 17 as a reserve. We put a ton of miles on that engine. That engine is a 17, and it's got 105,000 miles on it already. So my suggestion, if you were to go forward with this, I would not own a fire engine. I would lease it, then and rotate that truck out between every 3 to 5 years, because you're going to be, our maintenance never has gone down, simply because the new emissions on them, the DEF fluid, we have had a ton of problems with that. Being a Cummins motor, it was underpowered. I wouldn't do anything less than a 500 horsepower motor and above. I would do we hit it at a 450 thinking we were doing great. We're 50 horsepower short of what we needed to be, really. So, and that was custom built for us. That Ferrari's been a great truck other than the motor. But I would not buy one. I would not own a brush truck. I would go to a leasing company. I would lease them. That's one thing. We will never own another one. We will always lease, because we run way too many miles on it. And that's just my opinion on that side of it. But that's where, as long as I'm there and we're going for any other type of new apparatus, it will be leases. And they have those companies out there to do that.
Okay. Can't think of anything else?
Andy, do y'all, did you say y'all own the volunteer, all the vehicles?
No, sir, we do not. That's why we had to reimburse them for their insurance payments. And that's a pretty good amount of money every year. It can range from $3,000 to $5,000 per department, according to how many apparatuses they have. North Hopkins is our largest fire district out there. We used to have 12 volunteer departments. In Peerless, which is over towards Commerce area, they had 2 people that was volunteer, a dad and a son, and they just could not keep up. So we actually merged those 2 districts. The courts merged those 2 districts together, because y'all as the Commissioner of Court are the one that we run under y'all's authority. Even myself and my department runs under the Commissioner's authority. Without your authority, we don't run. I mean, if they did run, they would be impersonating a first responder, which is a felony. So we've had to shut departments down through investment money, things like that, until we got all that squared away with the Texas Rangers. That department came back online again after everything was cleared out. The membership was gone that was involved with that, and they started from scratch, basically. But they had all the equipment, building, and things like that. So those are things that, a lot of times we all forget. Even EMS runs under the authority of the court, the Commissioner's Court, and y'all decide how y'all want to play it out, because that's y'all's #1 job is to provide emergency services for the citizens in the unincorporated area. So that's just one of the ways right there. But yeah, we reimburse them, because we did try to get a better rate for them, but Texas Association of Counties told us no, you do not own those vehicles. You have to reimburse them for what they pay, so we can't insure those vehicles. We went down that road trying to save them money on that.
One other thing, and I know this can happen. I've been involved in the fire service myself since I was 18 years old.
Yes, sir.
Which was a long time ago. But I know the state has got the 2 in, 2 out.
Yes, sir.
And if you got 3 men on a truck and you get to a structure fire, you don't have any volunteers there, or does that ever happen? Or what do you do in that situation?
9 times out of 10, we have operations chief going with them on that, so that alleviates that. But it's a very good question. It does happen from time to time, and we just have to wait till one of the volunteers gets there so we can get that 2 in, 2 out type situation. Now, if it's life safety, that goes out the window. You'll in and do life safety, but that's not very not a very common occurrence where you do have to go in and do a life safety type deal. But yeah, we run into that all the time. I mean, we're just like everybody else. We're very short-staffed, and I don't know that the same way with Silver Springs. That's one of the key reasons why we went forward and mended our relationship, was because they at best only have 7 firefighters covering that city. They've not had a volunteer or a combination department since the early 2000s. And so it's them, the paid guys, and that's it. Of course, they have a full-time fire chief, and even their assistant chief, he is not full-time. He's on the engine, acting as a supervisor, doing other duties during the day. So, if they have a person off, they'll pull that third man from the station by CVS in Sulphur Springs, and they'll move that person down to Central. Central always runs 4 in downtown, so they may be a two-man truck in by the CVS Station 2. So we all struggle with this, even on the paid side, because they'll have people out. We talked about TIFMAS. We are just now getting a lot of our guys ready and going through the school. Mount Pleasant Fire is much more advanced on that than we are. Just simple fact of we really can't leave our county unprotected. And we start doing that, yes, the state will pay for the funding to pay for the overtime covering the station. Yes, they'll pay for that firefighter that's out fighting fires elsewhere. But we will simply have to tag on with either Mount Pleasant or Paris or Texarkana. We only have 1 brush truck. We used to have 2, but it was just way too much maintenance, so we made a decision, get rid of that 1 maintenance headache and just run 1 truck. We've had a lot of our stuff is through grants. Our air packs, they all ran out at the same time. One of the first challenges I had to deal with is figuring out how in the world am I going to get all these air packs up to date. Well, we just had to bite the bullet. We did not, even though we have money in general fund, we still borrowed money to buy new air packs. We only replaced 16 of the 25 that went out on me, because they had to really have an air pack per person, whether they're paid or full time. And so that was a big hit. It's an even bigger hit now because everything's went up. It went from $6,800 per air pack. Now it's up to almost $10,000, and that was in 18 when we did that. So that's how much it's increased. That's a lot of money right there for one, but
Bunker Gear's done basically the same thing.
Yes, sir. It went from like $1,800 to $2,500 per set. Now it's bumping really close to $5,000 to $5,500 per set. And now we run 2 sets for our full-time guys, so they have a primary set and a backup set. And every 10 years, will we wore it 1 time or we wore it 100 times? In 10 years, it's gone. We can't use it anymore. It has to actually either be given to the volunteers, which a lot of times what we'll do, because it's still in good shape. We take very good care of our equipment, and we have to, because our lives depend on it. I got a group of good guys that care deeply about our equipment, and that's getting the right people in there. And I'm not saying I always had the perfect group of guys in there. Those guys have come and gone. I've probably fired more guys in the past year than I ever have for personnel matters, and that stinks. Because even one of my very good friends that was my deputy fire marshal had to let go this past year. So there's a lot of sleepless nights in this job right here. And especially budget time, I always tell our auditor, you caused me more sleepless nights from the month of May till October 1st than you ever know. Because I said, I'm blaming you for all this platinum blonde here. That's not gray, it's platinum blonde right there, by the way. So. Yes, right. Yeah, y'all did a good job keeping me. Shanna Osbrook does a fantastic job. She's very good to work with. But, I did go over budget. And matter of fact, Mondays when they go in there, and I waited until the very last minute because I didn't know what else was going to tear up on me. It has been, but thank goodness the other commissioners had the same issues I did. So they were really good to me. They didn't get on me too bad. So the one thing about the ESD, I'll tell you one last thing about that. I'm not trying to talk you into it or out of it, but you will have a board that you will report to you, and the volunteers they're not really, in my opinion, not any better position than they are right now. At least they can deal directly with their, you can deal with your constituents out here in your volunteer fire departments, where if you get an ESD, that's another tax that will never go away. Never go away. It will continue to always be there, just like your hospital district tax, but they won't have that indirect with you. You have to deal with a board. The board sets the budget. The board oversees everything. And so there's a lot to be said. And again, I'm not trying to talk you into it or out of it, but I just want to let you know, me coming from that, I see a lot of flaws in it. I see where a lot of it should be, a lot of times it falls back on the court, where they might have money for the VFDs that they pushed over to the taxpayers to figure out what to do and more taxes on them. And that's the last thing any of us want in this room, is more taxes on us, because it's what makes the world go round. But it also, if you can avoid it, it'd be the best thing. That's why we keep telling our volunteers, you're doing better with what you got here with the county coming out of the general fund than you are another taxing. Because a lot of them that are wanting that own zero land or rent houses and don't understand what that is when you get that tax bill in there. And if you don't pay it, you never truly own your house, because if you don't pay those taxes, the government really will get you on that. And that's just the way that is. That's just life.
True. When you transferred over to the county fire department, how did ISO ratings, did that affect you bad?
We did not have an ISO rating even to the day I came in there in 2016. We were still a 10. And that was one of the first things I did, is brought ISO in. We got some of the volunteer departments that were high, like a 9, 8. We all worked great together. We come in there and did our all of our tests together. We actually set a state record on getting the draft tank out, set up the tanker going, and pulling a draft and deploying water. We actually set a state record at minute 30. And that was pretty impressive. I was very proud of our volunteers and all of our county guys working together like that. But we went from a 10 to a 4, and we'd like just a little bit of paperwork to go down to a 3. The city was at a 4. They were not even wanting to talk about that. That was during the time that they had went to a public safety department, where the police chief was over fire and police department. They didn't even want to talk about that. After they seen what we did, we went from that, they went from a 4 to a 2. And they don't like but just a little bit to go down to a 1 themselves. And the volunteers, a lot of them went from that 7, 8 down to Cumbie is a 4 as well. Cumbie, and then us, and then Brinker's at a 5. So the highest one we have is a 6, which is Miller Grove. And we got 4 other departments that did not have an apparatus. When I came in, there was only 3 departments that had pumper trucks, engines. And now we only have 1 department left that is in the process of getting one, which I commend that to everybody working together and seeing the need of it. That's one thing I told the Commissioner's Court. We even had a little attack truck. We didn't even have an engine. I said, you'll never get an ISO rating with that little truck. We have to have an engine. And the volunteers seen the worries and importance, because that's the closest thing that a Commissioner's Court can do for the citizens. A tax rebate, and not being a tax rebate, is offering a lower ISO rating, because you're not guaranteed you're going to get a lower insurance rating. But what it does, it makes you a marketable, where you can go to those insurance companies every year and say, what's the best price you can get for them? Because my fire department has an ISO 4, and that's for volunteers and all of them. So it helps everybody's pocketbook.
Thank you.
How many do y'all run shift?
Run 3 full-time and then 1 part-time Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
That's adequate, usually?
Yes, as long as we don't get multiple events. And then we start calling more volunteers. We'll call in our neighbor counties. Sulphur Springs will come help us. Y'all know as well as I do, you get them an interstate, you're going to have backups. where you have secondaries go on, and yards like they get high speed out there. It's not so much the construction fire, it's just all the wrecks that we have, and you are in the same boat we are on that, with that 30 run right to the middle of you. Fortunately, Mount Pleasant gets a big bulk of it, but you have the outer layers of Titus that gets that. But we have 35 miles, we're 35 miles by 35 miles, so we're 35 miles of interstate that we have to deal with, and the city of Sulphur Springs only captures just, I think, only 5 miles of that. The rest of it is all ours. And again, they do come help us, but also we have a lot of help. The volunteer departments that are on the interstate with us, they're our most active, aggressive departments because, you know, they have to be. They have tools. They know what to do with those tools, extrication tools. So we work very well together with them. We know they're capable of what they're doing. We train with them a lot and all that. So.
How many active volunteers do you have?
Active, probably out of 11 stations, most of them have an average roll of about 10 to 15. Active-wise, you've probably got 50 that are active throughout the whole county. Just like I'm sure y'all the same way. You got 3 to 4 that's really active and you know they're going to be there. And then some departments, we don't even get an answer out of them during the weekday. So we deal with the same woes as y'all do. And I mean, it's tough, even with running the 3 full-time guys and the part-time guy. It's sometimes that our run volume, especially with the grass season we had just finished up with, and I know we're all proud to see all the rain come in because we were all struggling with that. We were running everywhere. I mean, there's times, I mean, I pull this white shirt off, I carry my gear in the back of my SUV, and I go to work with the guys. When I get there on a structure fire, and I see those guys wore out, we got a lot of good volunteers that are very capable of running a scene through command. I don't mess with them. What do you need from me? How can we help? If all those guys wore out, I'm pulling this shirt off, I'm getting right in the middle of it too. Because that's the only way it works. We all work together. Because I feel like I wouldn't have the respect if I didn't pull the shirt off and go to work. But there's times only time to pull the shirt off. I just go in there and I smoked a lot of these white shirts. I promise you. Dryer cleaners, we can't fix that. I'm sorry. What else? Y'all got any other questions?
What'd you spend last year?
This last year, or what is that on there?
The budget was,
$750,000. I went over bad.
Does that include the insurance and all that for the volunteer workers and all that?
No, that's a separate line on that. I don't control that. That's the $168,000, somewhere around there on that side of it, help with all that. But it's about $750,000. I went over budget about $40,000, and I'm generally less than 10 going over. But again, we had so much breakdowns. Fuel killed it. I was over that line by I'll probably about, when it's said and done, I'll probably be knocking on the door for about $15,000 over just on fuel. Repairs and maintenance. I had pump issues. I had phone issues. I had every kind of issue you could think of on that truck. Air conditioning issues. What do you think? Can't you wait on the air conditioning? Absolutely not, because you're dealing with 103 days. The guys, when they get out of the truck, they're done. When they get out of the truck, it's 100 degrees. You can't think like on a normal, as a person, if we didn't have the money in the budget to fix your personal air conditioner, you just roll down the window. You can't do that because you got gear on already. You're already superheated by the time you get out, and you're no good to me when you get out of the truck. So we had to get that air conditioner fixed, and that's probably the biggest issue on any new apparatus. It doesn't matter what brand it is. They just do not put an adequate air conditioner in any apparatus they build out there today. So those are things you have to deal with. I mean, I try not to bring it to my court until the end. That way I just get one good chewing instead of throughout the year. And that's what my auditors says too, is wait till the end of the year, we'll see where we at.
So your budget went from sub 800,000 to over $1 million?
Yes, sir, because of that, we had to pick up those 3 full-time firefighter positions
Okay.
that was actually on the SAFER grant. And that would be something if y'all decided to go forward on the county side to do it. The SAFER grant is a excellent tool to use because you are able to, I just said 3. If I'd have said probably 6 more, I would have gotten it because we're in a small county, we provide such a large area that we cover. This the American Firefighter Grant, AFG grant, the SAFER side, adequately providing safe firefighters. Frisco uses it every year, just for an example. As big as Frisco is, as much money as they have coming in Collin County, they still average about 15 to 18 firefighters a year adding on, and they use that SAFER grant. A lot of Metroplex use it, but a lot of rural departments use it too. And there's very few times you get turned down for that SAFER grant, but it's a, they pay, the federal government pays the 75% for the first 2 years, and you pick up the 25, and then the last year, they only pay 35%, and then we pick up the rest of the tab. Now, we finished that grant out a little quicker. It should have went all the way through this upcoming March, but we did not anticipate the pay raises that we got, and we did not add in the bunker gear with that. They'll pay for all that. But I did not do that with that group because I didn't know that was available. My grant writer didn't tell me that was available, so that was a mistake on my part. I could have had them fitted out with uniforms, their personal protective equipment and all that would have been paid for in that SAFER grant as well.
Do you happen to know what the city's fire protection budget is?
For the Sulphur Springs?
Yeah.
Let's see here. He just went over $3 million. Just because, no, I'm sorry, no, he's about 1.2 million, so I think he's about 2.5 million is what he is. Yeah, 2.5 million. Chief James and I have a great relationship, have to. There's probably not a day that we don't speak on the phone 2 to 3 times a day. And whether it be sharing questions about personnel, how do you handle this, how do you handle that, or what are you doing on this, or how do we want to work on this together?
So roughly 2.5 plus your $1 million, 3.5 for countywide fire protection, plus your, but then that doesn't, plus whatever the county pays to the volunteers.
Right, which is about 168, 170,000 roughly on that side of it. I really thought this year they would give an additional 200 a month on the stipend side, but they did not because we actually got the cap put on us. We reached our 3.5% cap because our appraisal values came in, and we had to go lower our tax rate from 58 cents a hundred to 52 cents a hundred. So the last 2 years we went from 62 cents a hundred to 52 cents a hundred. So we lowered it 10 cents in 2 years. So they had to do something, adjustments, so that was one of the things that got cut. Y'all understand that? We all think we're in the same boat on that. And the city of Sulphur Springs the same way, they got capped as well.
So we're comparable on total fire protection. If the city spends, I think our city's new budget is about 3.7. So anything that we pay to them helps them reduce that budget. But so overall, the total expense to take care of the city and the county is about 3.7 plus whatever we pay to our volunteers. And under your scenario, if we were to form a county fire department, I don't know how much the city could come off of their budget. I'm sure they could come off some. I don't know that they could come off of $1 million, but anyway, I'm just glad to know that our total overall budget is roughly the same as Hopkins County. It's paid for in different ways. Okay. Any more questions for Chief Hensley?
Thank you. Sure appreciate
We sure do appreciate
Yes,
your
sir. Yes,
time
sir.
again.
Yes, sir.
You're welcome to stay.
I'll sit around in case you have any more questions. If you can't think of anything, I kind of blocked the day out for you, so I'm good on that. And thank you again. It was an honor to come here and speak of this. Again,
Our honor.
y'all make your own decision on this, but that's how we work, and it works well for us at Hopkins County, but it doesn't necessarily mean it worked good for Titus. So, but we're here for any way we can help. If y'all called us today, we'd be here 2 counties away. We're on our way to help you. Thank you.
Appreciate
You, man.
All right, this is a time for questions, comments, words from the commissioners. Anyone in the audience? Well, again, my observations from that, total fire protection budget roughly comparable to Hopkins County, Sulphur Springs. When you look at the overall dollars spent, that 3.5 is split between the city's budget and the county's budget. In this case, very similar. We just compensate the city, so you're in effect reducing their budget by paying them $1.3 million would be, I think, the first year expenditure by the county back to the city. And so you in effect end up with comparable, not the same, but comparable numbers, where the city's net budget goes from 3.7 down to 2.4 because of the monies that the county spends in the way of compensation to the city through that contract. And again, what that does in my mind is it reduces that city budget, which is fair. It shifts more responsibility onto the county, because everybody within the city, any city taxpayer, is also paying county taxes. And by getting an infusion of monies from the county to the city, you theoretically reduce city taxes with that compensation, and therefore you put more of that financial burden on those that are in the county and relieve some of that burden from the folks that are in the city already paying county taxes. Would you come up to the mic if you would, or take it back there with you, either one?
I just wondered, he's talking about how big their county is. We know how many square miles we're covering here? Is it?
What are we, 400?
472 or something other like that, I think.
So we're at 472 and they're at 793?
Over 400, I don't know exactly what, right off the top of my head.
And you're at 793, so almost twice as much as what we're having to cover here.
What's your county population?
Roughly about 38,000, with 16,000 being in the city of Sulphur. What are we?
32, and some, a little over 32,000,
I
about
thought we
split
were
50-50.
closer to 35.
It's about 16 and 16.
All right, members of the Commissioner Court, time for you to decide something to do. Table it, make a motion. Again, hold on. I don't want to shortchange anybody in this audience. I got a lot of knowledge out here if there's anybody that wants to speak or ask a question. I'm sorry, Commissioner, go
Judge,
ahead.
I do have a question.
Yes, Barbara.
Do you mind? Back to when we were talking about the comparative numbers, the city of Sulphur Springs budget is about $2.5 million.
Yes, ma'am, right.
And in Hopkins County, with your volunteers and then your budget is 1.3 million. I have a copy of your budget right here. So that brings you to about 3.8. Add those together. So the city of Mount Pleasant budget is $3.7 million. And the county budget that we have currently budgeted is $1.3 million, which brings us to just over $5 million. So I don't think that that's the comparison that you were mentioning. I may be missing something there, but I don't see how those numbers, if it's 2.5 million from the city of Sulphur Springs and 1.3 from Hopkins County, that's 3.8 million.
Because if the county pays the city 1.3 million, you reduce their net expenses.
But we didn't do that over, if we did that over here, then the numbers are not going to be comparable. I'm just adding those together. If you subtract them, it's still going to be the same problem. I don't think it's comparable numbers there. I have, the Hopkins County budget is $1.3 million. What they pay for their 2023 budget, and then that's for within the department, and then the volunteer departments. $1.3 million. Is that correct? Okay. And then just off the cuff, and I understand you were just trying to remember because you don't work on the city's budget, but the city's budget is around 2.5, which brings us to 3.8. So the city of Mount Pleasant's budget is 3.7, nearly 3.8. And what we would need to pay, what's in our budget, is 1.3 million. That total is over $5 million. So it's self-sufficient.
But doesn't that is that 1.3 revenue included in the city's 3.7?
Yes.
Okay, I thought
Because
that
that's supposed
was,
to be
I
all
thought
the
that was
cost.
net.
No, that's all the cost.
Okay, Brad's shaking his head back there,
Our
yes.
total budget is 3.7, including what we get from y'all.
Yeah.
You
So
don't add the numbers, you take them. Right.
So you don't.
So we can take out the county money out of the city budget, and so we have us left.
Yeah, that's my question, Brad. Maybe I'm not making myself clear. When they present to us a budget of 3.7 and want us to pay 40% of that, that 3.7 isn't really 4.7, and they're reducing it by the million that they receive from us.
No.
So again, I say that the total budget of the city of 3.7, once they receive that $1.3 million from us, their total expense is 2.4.
Well, that's true, but that's because we're paying it.
Well, I know, but
And so that's why I'm saying-
I'm looking at what is total fire protection for the county and city of Mount Pleasant and Titus County cost? Is it not 3.7?
3.7 is what the city's budget is. Our budget is 1.3.
But again, we pay that in to the city, which reduces their 3.7.
I see how you're getting there. Is that what you do at Hopkins County? Do you, the amounts that the city pays, does the city pay you for any
No, ma'am, they
services?
don't pay any services.
No services are paid there. Okay.
We just go in, we have automatic aid, so we
Okay.
don't charge them anything, and they do the compensation from the city.
Okay.
So we're on two different, well, I think we're close now to being kind of one department, but we're two individual departments.
Yes.
Because we take care of a lot of their stuff on the south side, because we're virtually like the Southern Spring Middle School. The department complex, where we're not even 1,000 feet from. We're going to be the first in on those, and we take care of them. We work together well. There's no conversation on either side anymore, other than the citizens that live inside the city, doing some spring. There needs some compensation back, because we're reminding the city that we don't charge that side.
Yes.
How much do we?
I understand what you're saying.
How much do we pay our volunteers in total for whatever?
215,000.
Okay.
And so that's the next number I wanted to bring to light. If you look at the Hopkins County Fire Department budget plus their regular fire department budget, it's $1,360,000.
Yeah.
For Titus County, it's $1,341,000.
Based on last year's budget.
No, based on our new budget. Because we have the volunteers.
How much have you budgeted as the contribution to the city, though?
$1,119,000.
Okay. 1 million. 119.
Plus the 215 for volunteers.
Okay, so just to be sure I'm clear in my head, back to looking at total cost of fire protection for each of these two counties, about the same?
Well, let me just do this right.
Well, no, not identical. We're still a little more. Well, I'm not sure that's it. I think that our city budget net of our contribution is going to probably be a little more than your city's budget.
Yes, sir. You're
Okay.
correct.
Okay. All right. Commissioners, what are you thinking?
Well, I don't like the proposed fire contract, especially with there not being a cap on it. I'm open to a county fire department. I think that's the direction we need to go. I think that the city fire contract is going to cost taxpayers too much money in the long run.
Do we need to get a lawyer to look at that contract, whether we go 5 years or 1 year?
Yep.
I don't believe John Mark, he stated he didn't want to be the one responsible for that. We need somebody with some background on fire contracts. So I'd like to get us a lawyer hired to look at that contract, the 1-year contract and the 5-year contract, before we make any further decisions. You want me to put that as a motion?
Well, let me remind
What do
you,
you
we're
think?
at the 21st of the month of September. And you've got 9 days until this contract expires. So would you be content in stipulating which direction you want to go, generally speaking, with the ability to have an attorney, including our own county attorney, review for anything that would not be favorable to us? Much like I stated in my comment there, and what I recommended that you do is approve the, let's see how I worded it. Accept the general financial terms of this is option number 1. Accept the general financial terms of the most current version, which is the 40% with the stair step. But you have a couple of additional clauses that I wanted to see in there about not being responsible for payment of what I'll call missionary firefighters that we send out to help outside of the county, and that our fire protection contract be reviewed by the county attorney and any other attorney that may be recommended by our county attorney. Now, how does that play over into the current contract? If you want an extension on that current contract, I mean, that contract has already been approved and it already exists. Whether we're granted an extension was a decision of the city.
My personal opinion, I just don't appreciate them waiting to the last minute to shove this down our throat. And we should have been working on it in February, March of this year, trying to get it done before the budget time here. They want to give it to us right here at the budget time. We should have been working on this way before this right here, I just don't agree.
Well, Commissioner, in all fairness to the city, I think that's why we've been getting a presentation from the chief, so that you would be prepared for this. So this isn't just a responsibility of the city, this is a responsibility of the county as well. And if we've had a better suggestion than what they've come up with, we should have presented it by now. So they called us up to their council chambers 2 months ago and gave us a general proposal of a 40% share, and at that time, we indicated, yeah, this sounded like something reasonable. And it really wasn't until we started putting the numbers to that we all kind of got nervous. So I don't know that they're waiting till the last minute. You know, we began this process quite a while back. I think that the city, in my opinion, is just sending us a message. We've given you a reasonable offer. If you have something that you think is better, let's hear it. We haven't proposed anything better other than less money. Go ahead and stand up there, and if there's anything else before I let Ryan speak.
I'll wait till he gets through.
Ryan, go ahead.
Was said that it's being shoved down our throats last minute. We were in a 10-year contract and then extended it twice. So we've had 2 years and now we're going on a third. And and from the gentleman from Hopkins County, can a county fire department be built adequately in a year's time? I mean, from what I heard you say up here, I don't think so. Yeah, so if we do a 1-year extension on top of the 2 that we've already done, we should have been thinking about this 2 years ago when we extended for a year then, and then another year, and then now another year. And we're asking for another year. And we're not prepared for it at all. I mean, we haven't even made the first step to try and do it. And I know I had 3 fires on my place when we were in the drought. And all 3 of those gentlemen, 2 Cookville and Mr. Eubanks there, attended all 3 of them. And I can promise you this, if Mount Pleasant City wasn't there, we would have had a mess, would we not? I mean a bad one. I mean, it was dead middle of the drought, no rain, and it was going. And do you put a value on protection? Do we give a year, do we extend another year to sit here and try and figure out what we're going to do and then build an inadequate fire department, and then somebody like myself or one of y'all that live out in the county have a fire on your place and it burns up a whole bunch and we say, well, sorry? I mean, is that really the answer? You know, if we go to a 5-year contract, we got 5 years to look ahead and plan and determine whether maybe we need to have a county fire department at some point later on down the road. But to just do another year and say that the city's pushed us into a corner, the third extension, we on 3 years should have been able to figure something out if that's the case. That's what I've got to say.
Barbara, for the record on that 5-year contract with 40% with no cap on it, what's that going to cost the taxpayers?
With a 10% increase each year, that we arrived at 10%, John Mark Coburn and I did, because their current budget is almost 9%. So we looked at the cost for a 10% increase annually. The current amount that we would need to pay is $1,203,000. The following year is $1,343,000. The following year is $1,493,000. In 26, $1,654,000, and in 27, $1,829,000. That is at 5%. Those are 5% numbers. The first year's 10% and then 5% on the rest of those. Now, what I want to caution you commissioners is what Mr. Inslee referred to when he was talking about the tax increase. There's a limit. We have the same limit of 3.5% that every other entity has. That will only generate for us about $390,000 annually for an increase. So you can see when I'm reading these to you, it's going to take around $125,000 for us to get each year, and it increases each year. But if we generate $390,000, we have to pay an additional $125,000 to the city. That only leaves us around $250,000 to fund any increases in our current budget. Our current budget's around $17 million. That leaves us $225,000 to fund fuel costs, utility costs, any salary increases, any other costs, any upgrades that we have to do anywhere. So the decision is yours to make, but I feel like as the auditor, I need to caution you on where that brings us. However, fire coverage is very important, very, very important. So it's a difficult decision to make, but it's important that you know what that is. So I want to caution you with agreeing to a contract that does not have any limit whatsoever. We have discussed a 10%. You went back to the city council with a 5%, which they promptly turned down. I don't know how to tell you what the right number needs to be, but I think there needs to be some kind of limit on there. Further in that contract, there's not a termination except for default for the first 5 years. And, those are my concerns.
But right now, we're at about $5.5 million with what we're paying now without the 40%, and the 40% within 5 years would be about $8 million. Is that correct?
No, that's $8 million over the course of 5 years,
Okay.
not annually. That's
Okay.
the total over 5 years.
Overall, over 5 years. Okay.
Yes, but if things stay the way they were, we'd be paying less than $6 million. That's the increase.
I think one of the questions you should be asking is, that's not the total net cost that it's going to cost. The question would be, could you provide your own department at a significant savings over what the proposed contract costs you to pay to the city? Because you've got to pay somehow, some way for fire protection. So we don't need to say it's going to cost the taxpayers $8 million over the next 5 years.
We've already got a pretty good start. I mean, right now, what we pay the city, we can fund 12 full-time firefighters, correct? So, and then plus, I want to look into American ARPA money to see if we can use some of that money as well to build a fire station and buy some of the supplies that we would need to run the fire.
But what do you hope to achieve? How much savings do you hope to achieve by doing that?
I really don't know. I just don't know more than what we're...
That's my point. None of us knows. But we know we've got to make a fairly significant expenditure. Can we beat what it costs us to pay the city? Maybe we can, maybe we can't. You may make a real mistake in assuming that you can and end up spending more. Now, can the city cut their budget by $1.3 million after this first year? I don't think they can. They're still at a basic level of providing, with their 33 firefighters, service for the city. So when you combine the city's new budget without the county, plus the new county fire department, is your total overall dollars spent on fire protection going to be more or less than this current contract? I say no, it's not. Chief, welcome.
All right, everybody knows me, but just for the record, my name is Marcus Williams. I'm the Assistant Chief of Cookville Volunteer Fire Department and the first captain with 5-Star Volunteer Fire Department. Yes, we've heard good and bad. We've heard the arguments. My question is, when something happens, would you rather pay 40% of the total cost or 100%? Do you want to pay 100% of the fuel cost for running the truck, or do you want to pay 40% of the fuel cost? When the motor goes out in an engine or whatever he had happen, thank you, Chief, for coming and explaining it to us. Do you want to pay 40% of a $100,000 motor, and I'm just guessing, or do you want to pay $100,000 for that motor? He said they've got 67 fire apparatuses in the volunteer community. We have nowhere near that number. Brad and I were thinking 25? That's just off the top of my head without sitting here and counting it. We don't have 67. On the average day, you're going to get 2, maybe 3 volunteer firefighters out of the whole county during the day. At night, yes, you'll get more. You may only gain 1 structural firefighter. The last structural firefighter, or the last county house fire that I remember going to in the middle of the night, we actually gained 2. One of them was already a Mount Pleasant firefighter that come with Mount Pleasant. We gained 1 from Jerry Ward's district, which was Tri-Lakes. So therefore, if we're running a 3-man at night crew, we barely have enough people to do the fire. We've still got to bring our water. We have good water. We can bring water. We can move water. We can move water fast. That we do well. We'll get that. We'll beat them on that setup. That is our mission, Titus County firefighters, to get that number from him. I don't remember what it was, but we'll be calling.
Only 30 minutes.
Yeah. 1.3?
A minute 37.
Okay, Brad, remember that. But we pride ourselves in being able to get plenty of water there. Here's another question. Here's something that's big in our, right now everywhere, and y'all need to think about this, and I didn't want to go there, but I will. We have a college that sits outside the city limits. We have 2 high schools and elementary to high school campuses that sit outside the city limits. In the event that we have a mass shooter go in there, who do we want to come? Do we want 3 people there, or do we want 9 or 10? We want that many. Who wants to go to the First Baptist Church and tell Brother Davis, hey, you're outside the city, we're going to send you minimal people? I don't want to tell Brother Davis that in his congregation. That's things we got to think about. How do we provide the best service, adequate service? We don't want to go backwards from what we've got. We're getting a 4-man engine crew plus a chief right now. We're getting 2 brush trucks with an engine on a county grass fire. We had a fire just this last summer over in North Texas District. They ended up contacting, Mount Pleasant was there with 3 brush trucks, an engine. They contacted Cookville. Josh and I both were able to respond to that fire. It was about 4 o'clock in the evening. We took 2 brush trucks. If it hadn't have been for Mount Pleasant's engine being there, we would have lost 2 structures. That fire itself had potential for about 4 or 5 structures, but because Mount Pleasant was there with their brush trucks and their engine, we were able to save those structures and protect them. Cookville come in, Nortex had 2 or 3 trucks there as well. We come in with 2 brush trucks and was able to get, all of us together was able to get the fire down. If we cut our services, we may start losing structures. We don't want to go down. And in the proposal that McRae has given us, in 5 years, we're going to have more personnel. In the $8 million that we're talking about, we're going to be able to eventually have 2 engine companies possibly go into the county structure fire. That's going to be a minimum of 9 people automatically respond to a structure fire outside the city without a volunteer going. And that's in that 5-year plan.
You know, if we could provide fire protection for the county and provide fire protection for the city at a lower cost than we're doing now, I'd be all for it. But I don't think that we can, certainly not by creating a new county fire department. Now, as you've heard here, Hopkins County does it in a different structure. But is the dollars any different from ours? Not far off. Is it unfair that the city is asking us to pay for more money? Well, again, every dollar that we give to them is a relief of their fire protection burden. It's still the same dollars, it's just shoving more of that responsibility on the people that live outside the city. Because the people that live in the city that pay county taxes are getting, in effect, revenue from the county to relieve their tax burden. So it's the same dollars. And sharing a department like the city of Mount Pleasant with the quality that they've got of personnel and equipment is clearly the way for us to go right now. Now, 5 years goes by real quick, guys. And yes, could the budget get tight with current limitations that our Austin legislators have put on us? Yes. You can always ask the voters to allow you more than that. We want to avoid that at all costs. But I just don't see at this point what the creation of a separate and distinct county fire department is going to do for this county overall. It's going to cost more dollars to the taxpayers in the end and could very likely end up with less quality unless we really did it right. And we don't really have any idea of what it's going to cost to do it right. But it's going to be more expensive than what it is in this contract.
Well, I've been sitting here mulling this over, and I tested positive last Tuesday for COVID. And I sat at the house most of that time looking at this and studying about it, trying to decide what was best for my folks in my precinct, because that's what I'm here for. I've been involved in this business since, like I said a while ago, since I was 18 years old. Been a volunteer all these years. Don't intend to give it up until I can't do it anymore. But a life, to me, whether it be in a car wreck or in a house fire, is worth more than any $8 million that we could think about spending. So, something that Ryan brought up a while ago, we've had 2 years extension here that we should have been working on this. And I say we, I'll put all of us in that category. Have we done it? No, we haven't. But at this late point in time, I don't see that we can do anything but go with this 5-year term, 5-year contract. I don't like it. I don't like them telling me that I'm going to pay whatever they want to spend without a way of getting out of it. But I value lives more than I value that. So.
Thank you.
That's my take on it.
Anybody can speak, but you got to come to a mic or we'll pass you a mic, because our folks that are listening at home want to hear what you have to say. You can come on up too. Well, you can still come on up and you can stand behind him.
I made my mind up when I came here I wasn't going to say anything, but, you know, I was involved in this deal many years ago when we set all these volunteer fire departments up. And I listened to the city's arguments last night, and I'm listening to y'all's today, and it doesn't seem like to me you're very far apart. I think there's still room for some negotiation, the way I heard last night. So I would hope you wouldn't give up and try to go out and start you some kind of new fire department, because it's going to be tough to do. So just consider maybe tweaking your stuff a little. She said you are at 10%, you asked for 5, asked for 8, asked for 7. Huh? Well, I understand the unlimited is a problem. I understand that. But I just don't think you're in position to start your new fire department. This deal down here is very professional, and we lose a very professional situation for our county. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
How y'all doing? Most of you know me. I'm a rancher in northern part of the Titus County, but Dana's my commissioner. Dana, the only thing I don't like is the unlimited checkbook. I mean, nobody needs an unlimited checkbook. I mean, I guess my wife does, but I'm kind of limited as to what I can provide on that. But we don't need that. And if Mount Pleasant, as the city, refuses to do anything other than unlimited, that's just not showing much responsibility to the rest of the county. I mean, y'all are the stewards of our money. Y'all take care of us. And I just don't think that that's a good thing to do, is just to open up a checkbook and say, here, you can do what you want to do with it. I mean, it's not physically responsible. I just don't see that. And I'm a businessman, and I can't operate like that. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Hollis.
You know, we've used this unlimited and blank checkbook. We still have a city council that has a budget and is beholden to a group of taxpayers. I personally trust the city council. I trust the management. I trust the chief. I think that they're going to continue to manage their money just like we would. If the tables were turned, we would be offended that they think that we would not watch their money just like we're watching our own. So I don't look at it as a blank check or unlimited, like they're going to run amok with our money any more than I think they're going to run amok with their own money. Chief Eubanks, welcome.
Yes, sir. To start off with, I may be in uniform, but I'm here representing Nortex today. And we've talked about the cost to maintain and run this. Has anybody thought about the cost to start it? Because we've lost all of our radio communications countywide at that point. We pull out the city, none of the county departments, with the exception of Talco, who's got their own repeater, will be able to function and be dispatched to any fires at that point.
I talked to Sheriff Ingram. He said that we could run off the heads if we decided to go that way, and he would dispatch
Every radio in Titus County still, and I got a price of about $20,000, will have to be reprogrammed. Every one of them have to be touched, because we can't talk on that frequency right now on all of our stuff. They've had us locked, some of the people locked out for years, not being able to use that frequency. I know FCC licensing, I call, is 2 to 6 months out, and they said roughly $50,000 to put a repeater in, then you're going to have to lease the space to put it. Sheriff's Department frequency works time being, but we can't overload them if we're running fire calls and they've got other calls running at the same time, in my opinion. I think Chief Hensley will have the same deal. You can't run it all on one, try to run law enforcement and fire all on one frequency. It's going to overload that system pretty quick, and nobody's going to get out. But there's a lot of, we've talked about the gear roughly. I mean, $5,000 to $10,000, and everybody's going to have new PPE, new air packs, engine, brush truck. There's a lot of money up front that's going to have to come up from somewhere. I mean, we've got a few engines in the county. Mine at Nortex is 22 years old, and it's sitting at Ricklick's behind a wrecker right now. So they're going to start going, all of our older stuff's going to start going down. And I don't know what that's about to cost me up there. It went down Monday night after a training session. I know Chief feels the pain on that. It happens, but we just need to look at all the big picture of it also, is where does this startup funds, where do you house it? Where's our building big enough? Or are you going to build a building somewhere to house you can't use any of the county departments now. We're not centrally located enough. I mean, we're spread out the far ends of the county. You're not going to get to a central location fast enough, in my opinion anyway. But that's all I've got right now.
Thank you.
All right, I'm back. Another thing I want to consider is, like Chief said, I-30. If Mount Pleasant's not coming and we only have 2 or 3 firefighters coming to our Cookville district on a wreck on I-30 like we had Saturday night, we've got 2 inbound helicopters coming. Guess what? 1 firefighter has to land helicopters. You have to have somebody designated to deal with that helicopter to get them safely landed. We have to have, fire department has to do traffic control. Thank goodness the other night, the city of Mount Pleasant originally got the call thinking it was in the city, which it ended up being 1.5 miles out of the city. They had 2 city police officers that stayed there and worked traffic, took city patrol cars and worked traffic. The deputies were there. They got another call and left. The city stuck with us till the duration, till the last fire truck left that scene. We have 4 vehicles involved in this crash, 2 18-wheelers and 2 passenger cars. we're spread thin trying to get to everybody and find out what's going on. We can't do that, in my opinion, safely with less firefighters. One of us is designated, which was me, to land in 2 helicopters. I got 2 helicopters coming in with 18 minutes. I have to get my landing zone set up. I've got to get cars moved. I've got to get traffic flowing to where I have an LZ adequate enough to land 2 helicopters. My hope for the first one getting on the ground in 10 and getting gone by the time that second one got there in 18, yeah, that didn't happen. So I had to move more cars and expand my landing zone twice as much. Luckily, I had the room to do that, and it didn't take long to do it. But there's things like that we have to consider. We have to consider that some of the departments in Titus County do not have rescue tools. Luckily, 5 Star just got some. As y'all know, we give over $20,000 for 2 tools. You know, so Nortex doesn't have rescue tools. Talco does have. Argo does not have. Argo don't have tools, do they? Argo don't have tools. Tri-Lakes has tools. So, yes, there's tools around us, but how long do you want to stay in that car and wait for them tools to get to you? Guys, we are in a situation when our pagers go off, seconds count. Every second counts. And the money will come. We'll figure that out. Somehow that's up to y'all. But when you're talking about the citizens of Titus County, it's lives that are, and they may be passing through, we don't know. But if you're trapped in that vehicle, you need to get out of that vehicle and get to the hospital. And if it takes us 10 or 15, 20 minutes to get you out of that vehicle, once we get there, we sure don't have an extra 5 or 10 minutes to try to get tools to you and we need to get there adequately, swiftly, get you out of that vehicle, because nothing can happen until we get you out of that vehicle. Thank you.
This, if we're going to go with a 5-year or a 1-year, that we're going to have a lawyer look at it. So we're going to have, so we'll have fire protection code first.
Read that, see what you think. For those of you that are strong supporters of a county fire department at this time, is there anything that could be done with the terms of the 5-year contract that you could tolerate?
Well, I think
a reduction from 40. We've already tried the limitations on their budget. And again, I don't know that it's going to be accepted, but
I think this is in stone. We've already tried to do a little negotiating. We've been talking to them for a while. And we've always worked with them. They never try to throw large figures at us, saying this is open-ended. They kept their prices low, you know, within reason the last 12 years when they extended that contract for 7 more years. One time for 5 years and a couple times for a year. So
one thing
it'll take a long time to get that kind of service.
One thing I will say is all the years that I've been involved with firefighting here in Titus County, they have always brought more, gone above and beyond what the contract stated that they would do. They've always done that, and will always continue to do it, I think, as long as Chief McRae's there. I can't say what'll happen if, you know, when he retires or moves on, but as of right now, any time that they've been called, they brought way above what the contract called that they were required to bring. So with that being said, they are, have done more than what we've asked them to do.
I don't think that they want to end a 5-year contract with us so mad that we are ready to bail out again. I think that they're going to I think that they're going to be prudent with their budget and therefore prudent with our budget as well. Chief?
I'd like to add to that, Commissioner, what you're saying. The difference between Titus and Hopkins and Sulphur Springs and Mount Pleasant was we were totally opposite. We were only getting 2 firefighters. This is before my time, so I'm only going by what I've heard through the years. So please, just what they did on it, they provided 2 firefighters with a small brush truck. No other resources were coming. That was all you was getting, and a lot of times the word was a lot of times those 2 firefighters might get out of their vehicle, but they didn't do anything to help. And that's a bad taste in your mouth right there, where y'all got a little different, where you're right. Working with Chief McRae, working with his guys, working around the volunteers, because it's a tight-knit community, and you know that. You've been in since 18. Yes, it is a whole lot different scenario as far as what Mount Pleasant does bring to the table, and we did not have that. That's where when they told them they were going from 30,000 to 300,000, they pushed back from the table because they knew what services they were getting, and it wasn't adequate. A little different scenario on that side. I just want to point that out on there because that's a big point right there to make.
And I would have felt the same way if Mount Pleasant had come in right now and said that y'all are going to pay us $4 million or this is it. I said, we got to back up here. We can't, there's no way. But the only part of this contract that I am unhappy with is the unlimited amount. If they would give us an amount or a way to get out of it, then I would be tickled to death with it. In fact, but that's the only thing that's bothering me about the contract right now is that part of it.
And we're 2 different worlds now. Sulphur Springs was a different fire department then. They're a very professional department. Not that they weren't then, but it's 2 different worlds, 2 different mindsets. You got of the chief that was there then versus the chief that's there now. Same way with us here. We were not always where we needed to be, but we're getting there, and it's getting better every day. And it's just leadership's everything. What you got, Chief McRae does a good job for the city of Mount Pleasant and for Titus County. And I can't say that enough how fortunate you are to have Chief McRae on that side of it. So he does bring a lot to the table. And I just want to point that out because that is really 2 different worlds where y'all are at now, where we were back in '98. So, thank you. Yes, sir.
If you have a clause in there that enables you to bail out of a 5-year contract, the benefits of a 5-year contract for the city goes away. They've got to be able to make some long-term plans and ramp this responsibility up with manpower, with equipment, possibly with fixed assets. I think you've got a better chance of getting a slightly lower percentage of their budget than you do saying, we don't trust you in your budgeting process, and therefore we're not willing to give you that open check.
That was not really what I was getting at, was the out clause, the more so the open-ended contract where it's, and I know there's got to be trust there. I think it would be the same if the roles were reversed. I think they would say, well, wait a minute, we don't want to do this unlimited. If they would come to some terms with us as far as the limited amount that however it may be, I don't know how they want to come up with it, and I would prefer that somebody besides me that knows something like that look at it when they do get it drawn up and before we, sign it. But that's where I'm standing right now, is the part about that. I don't know why they won't give to it. Cannot for the life of me understand why they won't. There's some of them that are saying it's going to be this way or it's not going to be. I don't know why, but anyway, that's.
Let me throw out an idea. If I was to come back to them with a counter proposal that included a ramp up 32, 34, 36, stop at 36. They may laugh at me, I don't know. Would that alleviate any of your concerns?
The 40% is not what scared me. It's them being able to, and I'm not accusing them of doing it. The Mount Pleasant City fire budget has been under budget for I don't know how many years now. But if they was to get somebody in there that said, oh, we're going to build this new fire station, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, it's unlimited to what they can tell us we're going to pay. And that's what bothers me, is that part of it.
So it's a trust issue.
Well, no, it's not really.
Well, what is it?
Well, I really can't tell you, Judge. There's just something there that I don't do my business that way. I don't just open it up and say, here you go. I'm turning this over to you. You're going to do what's right, I know.
You do that a lot because, listen, Jimmy, this is a close-knit community. Mount Pleasant, Titus County. These are our friends and neighbors. We're protecting our friends and neighbors. The city of Mount Pleasant's committing to do that, too. We always get along on everything except this fire contract nonsense. We have got the best fire department, emergency services. I'll put it against anybody in the state. I'm going to tell you, it's crazy. Little things that nobody even knows about that they do. Just to program a radio, they probably got a $5,000 program that Eubanks can program anybody's radio. I took him a radio, it was remarkable. They do it themselves. I don't think having that open like that, I trust them enough that we wouldn't do them that way. If something happens crazy, we're all going to talk about it and work it out. But, so I don't see it that way. I think the 40% is where we all agreed that's where it's going to end up doing. They decided to spread it over 5 years. So
40% is where it needs to be.
Yeah, they're plenty generous.
It needs to have a cap on it. Go ahead.
Regardless, we're all from Titus County. We all live in Titus County. We're a little bit smaller area-wise than what they're covering over there. We've got to the point now, I hope we can work something out with the city, I really do. We've gotten to the point now where if they tell you a 5-year or 1 year, we cannot put it together in 1 year. There's no possible way to put a fire department together in 1 year. If we can get them to work with us, that'll be great. 5 years is a short period of time to work, but we do need fire protection. 1 year does not help us. I don't have a vote yet. 1 year does not help Titus County at all. You're up against a wall within 1 year of getting fire trucks and things of that nature. If there's any way that we could agree to the 5 years contract going up to the 40%, I don't mind the 40% at all, just like Jimmy and Dana and everybody else don't. I trust the city council that we've got right now 100%, but elections have consequences, and they might not be the same city council that we're sitting down there with in 3 years or 4 years. They're up every 2 years. So that puts us in Brian don't want to say an open-end checkbook, but if you don't have a cap on a budget, to me that's an open-end checkbook. I'd like to see if we could go with them at the 40% and maybe take out a building of a new fire station and a ladder truck, and not have that in there for 5 years, and that would kind of control that budget some. And if they would agree to 12%, 10%, 15%, just so that we know that we can sit here with Barbara and know what our dollar figure is at the end of the day, instead of saying, come October, we'll know. With the firefighters going off and working, that's a federal deal. That's a wash. We get the money back, but it's okay to have that in there, but it's a wash. They also have got in there that at the end of the budget that they come back, it's not only that they will give us money back, but if they do go over the budget, Chief McRae's done a great job of staying under budget. As this gentleman just told you, things can happen. Prices go up in gas and fuel and things of that nature. If they do go over that budget, we're responsible for that budget as well. The overage just as well as any underages there. So, like I said, don't have no vote, just my opinion. I pray that y'all don't do just a one-year contract, because we cannot get a fire department together and protect our people of Titus County in 1 year. Can't happen. If the future looks bright, if we work out a long-term deal with them, if not, over that 5 years, maybe somebody else coming into office, but I'd love to have a situation like they've got, with them working with the city, both of them working together. When their firefighters are off, they can go to work for the county. When the county's is off, they can go to work for them, and we can protect Titus County to the fullest. Lives do matter. When they're having wrecks out there in front of my place with a new loop, trust me, lives matter, and definitely matter to me, and you can't put a price tag on that. So we do need to take care of the citizens of Titus County.
Thank you.
I just want to recap on that. He's right. Their full-time guys work part-time for me, and my full-time guys work for the City of Silver Springs. Hadn't always been back at it. Actually, I found an old handbook back in around 2006, 7, around there. It forbidded us to work for the City of Silver Springs Fire Department and Hopkins County EMS. That is no longer a rule. My guys can work for Hopkins County EMS, so you're correct. Again, it ain't always been a great relationship, but it is now, and it, again, took us 16 years to get there. So it's nothing overnight on that.
I got a motion here. I want to read it. Just a little thing here. I move that we accept and make a motion in general financial terms of the current version of the fire protection contract with the City of Mount Pleasant. And specifically, the county is going to pay 40% in 5 years. It'll start this next year over a 5-year period with 32%, then 34, 36, 38, and 40 on the subsequent anniversary dates of October 1st. Of 23, 24, 25, and 26. I further stipulate that the contract include a clause requiring a statement from an independent auditor that there is no net expense to the city's budget for which the county is responsible that is due to sending firefighters and equipment to any jurisdiction outside of Titus County. I further stipulate that the fire protection contract be reviewed by the Titus County attorney and any other attorney. We may choose to hire one that may be recommended by the county attorney, and that any suggested changes would be voted on by the Fire Protection Committee for inclusion in the final draft of this contract. So this would get us moving forward and keep our protection
I have
for the
a
next 5
motion by
years.
Commissioner Fitch.
I second it.
I have a second by Commissioner Parker. Discussion. Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. All right. Contract is not done yet, but we've got a huge chunk of it just passed there. I will take this back to the county and begin the process of a thorough review of the contract by John Mark Coburn, and then listen to his recommendations for having another attorney on behalf of the county review this as well. And I'll get back to you. We may have another meeting here soon, but I've got a feeling I can talk the city into giving us a few more days beyond October 1 to get this thing reviewed, and maybe we can get it reviewed before the 1st of October. I just want everybody listening to this to understand this is a huge pressure on these commissioners. This is a difficult decision. You've heard them. They've spoken from their heart. This is not something that they've taken lightly. It's an important decision, though. It affects us for many years to come. And every one of you being here today and the comments that you've made have helped us to make these decisions. Chief, especially you. Again, we thank you for your time. Firefighters, thank you, and Mike, and Kent, we appreciate everybody. So, not what I had hoped for, not a unanimous vote, but I kind of knew going into this we had such a variety of opinions here. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I just did not think we could achieve 100% unanimity and then get the city to agree with it as well. So, again, thank you for 2.5 hours. I appreciate this. I will get on the phone with the city manager and tell him where we are and see how we can proceed, and I'll report back to you, commissioners. So with a motion to adjourn, that's what we'll do.
Make that motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Parchman. All in favor say aye. Aye.